So, in this video, I want to get into input-output redirection and pipelines. All right. Sorry about that. I have a sore throat right now. Okay. So, when I run a command, a good command will open a few streams. Okay. And one is called std out, the other is called std error, standard out, standard error, and standard in. Okay? Now, if I do an ls-l/etc, right, I get the output of that command, right? And I can take that output. This is going to standard out. I can take that output and I can redirect it. Okay, so I can say, don't put it to a screen, put it to a file. Okay, so it takes the output and I redirect it to a file, and now I take a look at the file, and I've got this file on my system that was the output of the command. Okay, it's called ls.out. Actually, I'm going to work in a different directory. Redirect that to ls.out, and I've got a file now called ls.out, right? Now, this is the same as putting a 1 right here. Okay, the 1 represents standard out. Okay, it's the same thing. I get the same output. Okay, now if I log in as a user that's not the super user, not root, Frank, I don't have access to a lot of things, such as root's home directory, right? If I come over here and I'm root right here, and I do find /-name password, we'll go into the find command here in a minute, but the find command is a good way to show you output here. If I do that, it's going to find the password file, right? Well, root has access to pretty much everything on the system. Frank, on the other hand, does not. So I get the output I'm looking for, but I also get just a bunch of errors, right? So if I'm interested in just the output of the command and not the errors. Remember, 1 was for standard out, 2 is for standard error. And I'm going to redirect it to this thing called /dev/null. Okay? I don't put a space there. Some people do. I don't think it makes a difference, but so I redirected the errors, all these permission denied errors, to that's the standard error stream, to dev null. What's dev null? It's literally a bit bucket. What it does is it takes input and it does absolutely nothing with it. I like to think of it as a garbage disposal. Basically, if I'm not interested in it, I want to throw it away in the garbage, I will just redirect it to dev null. So that is a bit bucket, okay? That's just basically saying take the output of all the errors and throw them away, okay? Now, I can do find /-name password, redirect standard out to stdout.txt or std.out, okay? And remember, this 1, if there's nothing there, if there's no 2, there's no 1, it defaults to 1. Okay, so if I just do the greater than symbol, it's going to say standard out. And I'll take a 2 and redirect this to standard error.out. Right? So now, if I cat standard out, I've got the output I was looking for, my standard out. If I cat standard error, I've got all the errors from the command. Okay? Now I want to show you something. So if I do this, and I redirect standard out to std.out, right? I'm not redirecting standard error, so it's going to show up on my screen. Okay? And I cat std.out. That's what shows up, right? I do it again. This time I'll redirect errors to dev null, my garbage disposal. Okay? I cat standard out, and that's what shows up. Do it again. Cat standard out, and that's what shows up. Now, with this, it'll just basically, if the file exists, it'll clobber it. It will overwrite it. It will, if there's stuff in there, it'll overwrite it. If I do 2, it'll append. Okay? So do it again. Cat it, and now I've got it appended the results to what was already in the file. Append it again. Cat it. Appends. Append it again. Cat it. So a double greater than appends. If I take away that double, it's going to clobber what's in there. Cat it. And it's going to just basically overwrite the content of the file. So if you want to append to a file, you do a double. If you want to just create the file, if the file doesn't exist, it'll create it. If the file doesn't exist, that will create it as well. If the file does exist, that will clobber it. If the file does exist, that will append to it. Okay, maybe I am interested in both of, I'm interested in the output of standard out and standard error. I want all output. So if I do find /-name password, and I redirect this to standard.out, and I redirect this, or I don't redirect standard error is going to go to the screen because I'm not redirecting it, and standard out goes to the file, right? If I redirect 2 to standard error.out, the standard out is going to go to the screen, and the errors are going to go to the file. Maybe I want to redirect both, right? I'm interested in the standard error and the standard out output. So I redirect to combined. Remember, this is the same as doing this, and I'll do this just so you can get a kind of understanding here. I could leave that one off, it would be the same thing. I'll call it combined.out, right? And 2 and 1. And what is this doing? This right here redirects, it combines this, okay? It redirects standard error to standard out. So now standard out is getting both standard error and standard out. And then this redirects standard out, which is combined right here with standard error, to combined.out, right? So now, if I cat, let's clear the screen, cat combined.out, I've got the full output of the command, standard out and standard error. What would happen, let me remove combined.out, what would happen if I were to reverse this? It all went to the screen, and if I cat combine.out, it's empty. Why? Because I'm redirecting standard out to this file, combine.out, but I'm redirecting standard out to standard error. Okay? So standard error, what this does is says standard error now has all the output from the command. Okay? Standard out has no output at all. Thus, when I redirect standard out to this file, I'm getting nothing. So if I do that, I could just redirect standard error, and I would get both standard out, which is being redirected to here, and standard error. I get nothing on the screen, cat combined, and I've got that. Now, recent versions of Bash allow me to redirect standard error and out combined with a little shortcut. Okay, and the shortcut is this: ampersand, and then combined dot out. Okay, nothing goes to the screen. Cat combined dot out, and that right there was the same as doing okay. So this right here is the same as this. Okay. But there's a limitation to that, which I will get into in just a minute. There's one limitation to this new way of doing things, and I will cover that in just a second. Okay. Now, we have another thing, and it's called standard in. So when I run a command, say I run password, this changes my password, right? It prompts me. Now, typically, standard in is going to be your keyboard. So, you type commands on your keyboard, and that's your standard in. I can also redirect standard in. See, I can cat the etc password file, or this is the same thing, cat redirect standard in to etc from etc password. So I'm saying this goes to this command, okay? This goes to that command, and that does the same thing. If I type cat alone, it becomes a parrot. It takes the standard in, which is my keyboard, because it doesn't know what a standard in or doesn't have a file, and it prints that to the screen. Okay, so that is standard in. Standard in may seem like not as useful, but it's actually quite useful. For example, I could say cat, and this is standard in EOF, and I say, hello, my name is Frank. Type in EOF, hit enter, and it says, hello, my name is Frank. And when we get into scripting, we'll get into that, much more in depth. So there's standard out, there's standard error, and there is standard in. Another thing that commands return is exit codes, okay? And we'll go over this in much more detail, but I'm just going to mention it real quick. User add is the command to add a user to the system. So if I try and add a user called, Joe, it's going to say permission denied. Echo $? Well, the command followed by a colon and then echo $? And that'll tell me the exit code. The exit code is 126. If the user or if the command succeeds, so if I come over here and do user add Joe and I echo the exit code, it's going to say 0. If the command succeeds, it's going to say 0. If I try, Joe, I just added him to the system, I try and do it again, it's going to give me an error. User add, user Joe already exists, exit code 9. If it's 0, the command succeeded. If it's anything else, the command did not succeed. Remember man, we can man user add. Sometimes in the man page, it'll say what the exit codes mean. Here we go, exit values. The user add command exits with the following values. 0 is success. 9, username already in use, so the user already exists on the system. Okay, specified group doesn't exist, so on and so forth. So there's all these exit codes. So standard error, standard out, standard in, and exit codes. Now, the cat command is actually for combining files. So if I do this, I can send 2 files to the cat command. And here's the output of resolve, and here's the output of the etc password file. So I just wanted to kind of show you that. Now, the other thing we have on this system is called piping. So if I do ls-l/Etsy, right? Well, I got to scroll up, right? Maybe I don't want to do that. So I can pipe the output of that command, ls-l Etsy pipe. It's a shift backslash, okay, on my keyboard. Pipe that out to less. And what that does is it takes the output of the command and it sends it to this command, right? So I do that, and now, remember less? Hit space, I go to the next page, space, I go to the next page, B, I go back. Now I can look at that without having to scroll up. I can just sit here and, go through the files, right? So I just piped the command out to less. Okay, so we have some files in Etsy. Let's copy some files over here. Copy /Etsy/password here. We'll make a file called blah file. Make another file called dog food. Copy /Etsy/yum.conf here. /Etsy/motd. Motd here. Okay, so we just copied some files here to this directory, right? These two files don't exist in Etsy. They're blah file and dog food. This file doesn't exist in Etsy. These three files do. So I do ls-l/Etsy and I could do, well, let me see, what's the present working directory? ls-l/Etsy. Oh, and I can do just dot for the present working directory. Pipe that out to sort, right? Sort just sorts things. So pipe it out to sort, and if we come up here, let's do ls-1, and that'll just basically print each entry on one line, but it won't print the full details. ls-l prints the details. Okay, pipe that out to sort. So it's sorting by the file name. Now notice it sorts it, and notice we have two passwords. Well, that's because one exists here and one exists in Etsy, right? There's Etsy password and there's the password file here. So we piped out to sort, it sorts the files. Now we're only concerned with the unique files. So pipe it out to unique. And we come up here and we see that there's only one password now, right? Pipe it out to less. So take the output of that, pipe it out to sort it. Take the output of this, take out any duplicates with this command, take it out to this and send it to our pager so I can go through it like just, without having to scroll. There we go, and I can like I'm viewing a file. Okay, maybe I'm only interested in the ones that are duplicates, unique-d, and I can say, oh, okay, so motd exists in this directory on Etsy, password exists in this directory in Etsy, yum.conf exists in this, this one and that one. So another thing we could do is ls-1 Etsy, pipe this out to word count-l, and that says there's 265 lines, so there's 265 files and directories in Etsy. ls-1/Etsy and pipe that out to grep, which just greps for things, finds things, tries to make a match and say anything that begins with an uppercase character. Remember our classes there. Okay, so I'm saying send this output and grep for any file or directory that begins with an uppercase letter. And I get this one, and I get all of these, right? So these begin with an uppercase letter. Remember the alias we created earlier? It's showing me the matches. And actually, that doesn't mean begins with an uppercase letter. Let me touch slash Etsy slash blah right? So the uppercase letter is actually in the middle there. And I say this, and I say grep, and it finds blaka. So it says an uppercase letter exists in in here somewhere. We'll get into regular expressions later, but if you are interested in beginning with an uppercase letter, this is a regular expression thing, and that will not do blaka because it's saying it has to begin with an uppercase letter. That's kind of something, yeah, we'll get into that later. Okay, so I look at the Etsy password file, right? And I'm interested in only the first 5 lines. So head-n5/Etsy/password. Here, let me clear this. And that will just print the first 5 lines of the Etsy password file. I look at the varlog messages file, and it is huge, and it just goes on forever, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just trying to see the end of the file. I'm not trying to see the whole thing. Tail -n5/var/log/messages, and that'll show me the last 5 lines. If you omit the n and you just do that, the n just says 5 lines. If I omit it, it'll show you the last 10 lines. Same thing with head. If I were to omit that, it would show me the first 10 lines. Okay? Do this, word count-l. Pipe that out to word count-l to see how many lines we have. And it's going to say, oh, you have 10 lines. So it shows us the first 10 lines of the file. Now, if I want to follow a file, I basically want to see it as it changes. Let's do this. We'll just tail-f varlog messages. This is a common thing to do. And this is following the file. So as the file is being written to, I'm not doing anything. A lot of times you might see like a little transparent window, and it looks like it's making system logs, or someone's following system logs. Basically what they'll do is they'll open a terminal, make it transparent, get rid of all the borders, the bars, all that stuff, throw it in the corner somewhere, and do a tail-f/var/log/messages. So they'll have a window on their screen where they can see what is being printed to that file. So tail-f follows it. Okay. Now, other things we can do is, remember we were redirecting output earlier? Let's say I'm interested in the output of a command, and at the same time I want to see the output, and I want to see here, I'll do it over here. I want to see the output on the screen, and I want to save it into a file. We can pipe it out to t, okay, t output.txt, or out, find.out. Okay, so it went to the screen, cat find.out, and standard out went to the file, right? Now I'm interested in both, right? Combine like we did earlier, send standard error to standard out, t that to find.out. Okay, there we go. Now I cat find.out, and I got all the output. Here's the limitation of the earlier command, the shortcut I showed you. Remember I showed you that this is a shortcut for that to this and 1 or ampersand 1. This does not work. Just doesn't work. And there's probably a way to get it to work. Let me see if see, That's not good. That's that. I just escaped that and put that in the background. That'll be explained later. But yeah, so if you want to tee it, combine it. That's you. You have to go the old school route, and that'll print it to the screen and print it to the file find.out. Now, I could even pipe this, okay, to this and grep for bin. So I'm piping it to this, and this is writing it to a file and the screen at the same time. And then I pipe that output to here, and I'm going to grep for something. And there we go. It found bin right here, like that, bin, and it found bin. Okay, so that is piping. There is an interesting use of piping that I will cover shortly. It's not a very elegant way to do this, so I'm not going to cover it too much. I don't think I don't encourage this way of doing it, but let me start up a virtual machine. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me force that off real quick. Yes. I'm going to come over to my virtual machine, and I'm going to add storage. Okay. Create a disk on here. Storage format raw, we'll say. Default, that's all fine. And we'll just make it a 2 GB disk. Doesn't need to be very big. Create a disk on my VM here, so I got this disk. Now I come over here and I view console. And I'll let this boot up. Okay, so I'm booted up. I'm going to log in. Remember the dev directory shows our devices? I'm going to have, one second, I have virtual disks. I should have, oh, well, SDA. So /dev/SDA is the new device I just added, the new disk I just added, right? And it does not have a file system on it. In other words, it's not formatted. And it doesn't have a partition, but I can create a partition. So fdisk/dev/SDA, right? And I hit N for new, and I say a primary partition, and I say the first partition. Here I'll just go with the default and hit enter. I'll go with the default here and hit enter. And then I would hit W, and that would write it. That would create the partition, right? Here's another way to do this. It's kind of strange. It's piping. Echo new, echo P for primary, echo enter, echo enter, echo write. Pipe that out to fdisk/dev/SDA. Now watch. Value out of range. Oh, whoops, I forgot to echo the partition number. Echo 1 for the first partition, and then echo enter, echo W, pipe that out. Okay, so now if I look at /dev/SD, I have SDA1. So I just created a partition by piping basically what input it was expecting to the command. You can do this, but sorry about that. You can do this, but it's not something I recommend. When we get into scripting, we will go over there are much more elegant ways to handle this kind of stuff. If it's something you need to do every once in a while, you know, and you really know what you're doing and you really know the input it's expecting, then go right ahead. But otherwise, you know, piping like that, not something I recommend doing all the time. So let me show one last example of standard in, okay? Because it'll allow me to show another command too. So if I come over here and I do sort-K2, so this means sort the input on column 2, and I say etc password, it's sorting on this little X. Let's say sort on column 7. So it's sorted by their shell. 6 maybe. Maybe it starts from 0. Yeah, it starts from 0. Okay, so it sorts on the shell, right? So sbin / no login bin bash. Okay, so I get the input from the etc password file. If I redirect standard in and I say EOF like that, and we're going to cover this more again. 1 dog, 2 cat, 3 aardvark. And then I type in EOF. It's sorting on column 6. Whoops. Sort on column 2. It's going to sort that out, and it's sorting on column 2, and it's sorting by this column here. And you would think, oh, that's not sorted right. Well, no, it's sorting aardvark A, C, D. So that's another input redirection. And we'll cover those in more detail when we get into scripting. But next we're going to cover echo command, kind of looking at how the shell basically processes different things such as tilde and stuff like that. And so yeah, so that'll be the next video.